Drink deep or taste not the plasma spring.
You're changing, Seth. Everything about you is changing.
Human teleportation, molecular decimation, breakdown, and reformation is inherently purging. It makes a man a king.
I'm afraid!
Don't be afraid!
No. Be afraid. Be very afraid.
It's a very interesting situation. You have a beloved classic of the 1950s that was full of old school character types with an enormous fear of science and the unknown. Add that up to also being tasked with remaking it during the excess decade that we all know as the 1980s, and you've got a powder keg ready to blow. Director David Cronenberg made a respectable name for himself in horror with his interesting choices of stories and his creative touch. He was coined as a master of body horror with films in his catalog such as The Brood, Rabid, Scanners, The Dead Zone, and Videodrome. If he could hit gold with The Fly, it would make him the master of body horror. The question is, would audiences be able to stomach a tragic horror love story where greatness might ooze even more than Seth Brundle's diseased body? Let's get down to brass tacks. In this Why You Hate video, and by the way, I recently did a Why You Hate the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, Friday the 13th, 2009, A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge, as well as Scream 6, Halloween Ends, and Friday the 13th 5, A New Beginning. This is absolutely fun to do, and I'm very proud of this series and happy that people are enjoying it. Check them out if you haven't already, or if you need some fun and a horror discussion and you've got the time, check them out again. It's not going to hurt, I promise.
So fuck your shit up, boy.
So, as I was saying, I'm going to go over reasons why some fans have issues with The Fly, including multiple things that I find this film does extremely well. I will also attempt, if at all possible, to show how some issues might not hold as much weight as they seem. So get your coffee for your full cup of sugar, a baboon that won't get turned inside out during teleportation, your favorite sexy babe from the local bar, and some of that synthetic steak. Here are the reasons why you hate The Fly. Number 1, false starts. There were multiple hiccups trying to get a studio interested in remaking what the industry still considered to be simply a B movie. Screenwriter Charles Edward Pogue and producer Stuart Kornfeld were the ones who wanted to change the pace of the film by having Brundle's transformation gradual and more explicit, which was a stark contrast and difference to the instantaneous change in the original.
If it was more of a metamorphosis, that was something that interested me because I thought that was a way to really, tell a longer story.
20th Century originally had no interest in the project, but after some persuasion, they would at least distribute the film while production funds were the responsibility of Pogue and Kornfeld. In comes the legendary Mel Brooks, who put up $1 million to get the movie into production. Originally a project for Tim Burton to direct that didn't pan out, David Cronenberg was eyed as the director that was a perfect fit for this film because of the required effects and body horror elements. Unfortunately, Cronenberg was attached to another beloved film full of effects and imagination.
They erased your identity and implanted a new one.
Watto wants what's in Quaid's head.
Total Recall. Cronenberg worked on the script for Total Recall for a year, carefully removing the humor of Philip K. Dick's original story and adding his own trademark steely isolation. Cronenberg is credited as the one who introduced the idea of a rebellion of Martian mutants into the script and invented the character that would eventually become Kuato. Cronenberg realized that what the studio wanted was far too different than what he was willing to provide, and so he left the project. On the Fly's side of the fence, attached director Robert Bierman had a family tragedy and had to leave the production.
You know, I could have gone on, gone on to the movie and done an okay movie, but I didn't want to make an okay movie. I wanted to make the best movie.
This opened the door for Cronenberg, and David agreed to come on board as long as he could rewrite the script and have creative control. However, key details from Pogue's script, such as the fusion of man and fly and details of the metamorphosis, were retained. David Cronenberg has often spoken about his surprise when the film was seen by some critics as a cultural metaphor for the disease of AIDS, since he originally intended the film to be more of a general analogy for disease itself and the terminal conditions like cancer, and more specifically, the human aging process. Number 2, tone and time. The idea of the opening title card, the idea of it fluttering in, was done initially for the film's teaser. Cronenberg liked it so much he incorporated it into the finished film. And at the time, the horror genre didn't have a film quite like The Fly. David is well known to explore an individual's perception of existence and pain, but with protagonist turned antagonist Seth Brundle, there was something else that would be explored: romance and love. In sharp contrast to the gray, unemotional, science-based vibe of the film, a tender, innocent, and loving romance developed between Seth and Ronnie, played by the amazing Geena Davis, who at the time was Jeff Goldblum's real-life girlfriend. The marriage of these opposing strong themes had rarely been explored in a horror film at this level. It made The Fly more serious than what might have been originally perceived as just a special effects popcorn movie. Most films of the time leaned one way or the other. Films that dive into the warnings and outcomes of science horrific discovery, such as Reanimator, The Thing, Scanners, Return of the Living Dead, usually didn't have strong romance plots that were essential to the story.
And you blew it! You blew it!
The Fly was quite different, and it still is today in my humble opinion, with its romance angle tied directly into the tragedy of the story itself. Number 3, becoming the Fly. The word gross is defined as very rude or coarse, vulgar, very unpleasant, repulsive. This word defines the Fly for better or for worse.
You're shouting it from the back of a horse.
Many people, and some that I've heard from personally, define the Fly only as the gross depictions of the transformation of Brundlefly. I can understand this, but I also think that it can be unfair because there is so much more to the film than that. The character arc for Seth is truly amazing. Distraught, drunk, and jealous of Ronnie's ex-boyfriend, Brundle decides to attempt teleportation alone, unsupervised and without tests done on the baboon that had successfully teleported. It was a recipe for disaster and we all knew it, and the tipping point of the movie to move into the fast lane. Unbeknownst to Seth, a housefly gets into the pod, and you know what this means.
And you blew it! You blew it!
At first, Seth gets freaking MCU-like superpowers, and I'm talking about Spider-Man shit. He has strength, agility, endless energy, perfect for some loving time. We'll get back to that later. But a scene where the apples started to get separated from the oranges is the coffee scene. I mean, can he fit any more sugar into that cup? He is talking like 100 miles per hour, like a crackhead about to score the biggest pop of all time.
And not to wax messianic, but it may be true that the synchronicity of those two events might blur the resultant individual effect of either individually.
That's the stupidest fucking thing I ever heard.
Oh, and fun fact, that particular scene where Seth is talking endlessly, it was only half scripted when the production began. The remainder was written the night before the scene was going to be filmed, as Jeff Goldblum felt that he could add more to the character. Who's your daddy?
Look at us. Hey, look at us.
Look at us.
Huh?
Who would have thought?
Not me.
Speaking of daddies, after lots of loving with Veronica, Seth wants her to go through the teleportation to become, as he calls it, purified. She says she won't do it. I don't blame her. So of course, he heads to them streets. He goes to the local bar and decides to join an arm wrestling contest where the winner gets a sexy chick named Tawny for the night. Sounds fair to me, right? Right. The wrist-breaking scene is fantastic and also freaking gross. Seth is full of himself and easily defeats the guy. And then he brings Tawny back to his loft. He shows her his teleporting magic trick and gets down to the business. Shout out to Tawny, I'm just saying.
Are you some sort of magician?
But seriously though, would you have stayed there like she did?
I don't want to try that.
Why not? It'll make you feel sexy.
But I already feel sexy.
Seth tries to convince her to go through the pods as well, but she says that she's afraid. In comes Ronnie with the scene and the tagline of the film that became a pop cultural sensation. Tawny says, "I'm afraid," and Seth is like, "Don't be afraid." Then Ronnie drops knowledge saying,
No. Be afraid. Be very afraid.
"Be afraid. Be very afraid. No more fooling around with Miss Sexy for you, bro." Ronnie said that something is wrong with Seth, and the tests done on the hairs on his back show that they are not human. What? After this conversation, this argument, Brundle notices that his fingernails come off, and yeah, this is the beginning of the trip into Grossville. Get your tickets, people.
Yay!
Seth's transformation, it happens over 4 weeks and 6 days. That's a long time. As he literally transforms into what becomes known as Brundlefly, he loses body parts like you wouldn't believe, but he also loses himself in stages. As the audience, you feel his unrecognizable. This parallel to disease and aging is something that we can all understand, and although the gross factor is tough, and it's through the roof for some, the heart and emotion of the story beats loud and clear. Again, this is the protagonist, the hero, disintegrating before ours and Ronnie's eyes. Fun fact, the Chris Walas Inc. designers studied graphic books on disease as a starting point for their Brundlefly makeup creature designs. The final Brundlefly creature is horribly deformed and asymmetrical. This reflects director David Cronenberg's idea that the creature shouldn't be a giant fly, but rather a literal fusion of a man and an insect that embodies elements of both. Although the only technique that Walas avoided for filming was bladder effects, which were used in An American Werewolf in London from 1981 and The Thing from 1982 to great effect. Walas didn't go this route because it had already been done many times in previous movies, and he didn't want the final transformation to become just one more in a long line of them. Seth goes through all of the stages of grief during his transformation. Denial, he refuses to believe anything is wrong, believing instead that he has become improved. Anger, he becomes short-tempered. Fear, he is afraid as he sees his body starting to deteriorate. Bargaining, he attempts to arrest the process by fusing with another life form. And acceptance, he begs for death. Number 4, heavy scenes. This film makes you invested in the character of Seth Brundle. Even though he is a genius, he is very relatable thanks to the performance of Jeff Goldblum. He is the underdog, the guy that just needs a chance to take his shot at being successful in life and his dreams.
The world will want to know what you're thinking.
Fuck is what I'm thinking.
Good.
We've all been there, or we will be. When he is well into his transformation and Ronnie goes to see him one last time, he truly is not the Seth that we or Ronnie knew. He speaks erratically and Goldblum's skills are on full display. To emote under so much prosthetics, which took hours to put on, and to nail it isn't easy, but Goldblum shows us how to separate the apples from the oranges in acting. not making sense, acting like everything is okay, and then a deep dive into insect politics. He's breaking it down more than his diseased body is. But that's not the worst of it. At the end, as if this human side came back for a moment, he says, "What I'm saying is I'm an insect who dreamt he was a man, but now that dream is over, and the insect is awake. What I'm saying is if you stay here, I will hurt you." The incomparable music from Howard Shore accentuates this heartbreaking moment all the more. If this isn't considered a heavy scene, and it should be, I can't imagine what is. Number 5, the finale. The finale of The Fly doesn't have any sunshine or rainbows for the audience to bask in. Seth has become the undisputed villain, and he knows it. After Veronica admits her pregnancy to Stathis and decides that she has to abort it, the race is on for them to do it and for Seth to stop it. It is a highly emotional scene at the clinic when Ronnie is absolutely worn down and distraught. She loves Seth, but after last seeing him during his insect politics speech, where he has effectively become the actual monster that he physically resembles, what choice does she really have? Cue in a confused, angry, and barely human Seth, who crashes into her window and takes her back to his loft. He now knows what the solution will be, and it is absolutely despicable. He intends to use the telepods to fuse himself with pregnant Veronica to become one organism. The scene is impossibly well done, although not something that you can watch all the time, and I can understand that. Stathis tries to save Ronnie, but Seth stops him, and then his foot and hand gets dissolved by Seth's vomit drop. It's a disgusting scene, no doubt about that, and it isn't for those with a weak stomach. But the worst is still to come. Ronnie tries to fight off Seth while being dragged to the telepod, and then it happens. Seth's body breaks down and reveals his fly form, and I'm talking about his head splits open and all of it. The practical effects in this scene is legendary to say the least. It's basically showing a fly coming out of its cocoon, but in this case, the cocoon is the human body. Yay! Gina Davis was so believable in this film, but particularly in the finale. Her emotional roller coaster has been floored to 100 miles per hour, and it's only going to get worse. She's thrown into the pod by the fly. Barely conscious, Stathis shoots at the pod to free Ronnie, and after Brundlefly tries to escape, he is teleported with a piece of the pod. When the receiving pod opens, your anticipation is at an all-time high because of all the grotesque things that have come before it in this movie. Brundlefly is merged with the pod and effectively dying. When Ronnie cries with the shotgun in her hand and Seth pulls it to his head, you can't help but feel sorry for the situation that has happened. The scream let out by Ronnie is everything that you will ever need to know about this movie and its ending. Sad, bleak, and utterly powerful, the finale is not for everyone. Perhaps this is a reason why so many fans cannot enjoy this film for what it is, a horrific and tragic love story. No happy ending and no apologies. David Cronenberg, quite possibly, at his best. At the end of the day, The Fly from 1986 teleported its way into horror history, and we as fans must deal with it in our own way. Cronenberg himself stated how disturbing yet emotional he finds the film to be. He believes that it's one of the contributing factors to the film's success, that it attracted an audience that generally did not watch horror films, especially one as graphic as this. But was this the right way to approach the film? Is it a masterpiece, or is it just a gross-out film? As always, this video is not here to make you love The Fly or to hate it. It's simply a discussion to highlight the history and aspects of it with you, the viewer, and also to talk about some of the issues that some folks have with it. So what do you think? Are you a fan of The Fly? If so, tell us why. If not, let's discuss why you hate The Fly. If you haven't hit the like button for more content, please do. If you're not subscribed to the Nightwatch Zone, this is the time to do it. Do it and become part of this fantastic movie community. where you'll never love and talk about movies the same. If you like this video, check out some of my other Why You Hate videos and other content here, and I'll see you there. If you're watching this, if you're listening to this, you are the Night Watch. Peace.